Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another Astral interview. And here with me, I have Kristen Ragusin. Am I saying that right?
It's Ragusin, but
Ragusin. Yeah. Okay. Kristen Ragusin. We'll get it right. So I learned about Kristen through David Sarita. He got this book and he read through this whole book and he was super excited after that. He's like, you got to get this book and you've got to meet my friend Kristen. And I'm like, okay, let's do this, right? And so before we go into your book and the amazing content that's in there, which I haven't read actually, I've just skimmed and I've read excerpts and I've read the back cover and so on, but not read it. And I kind of did that purposely because I wanted to talk to you before I read it. And so what I'd like to do first is for you to tell us a little bit about yourself before we even get to your book. Tell me about you. Where'd you grow up? Tell me about it.
yeah. In one way, I was sort of destined for all this stuff, but I was still shocked when it became the main part of my life. When I was a little girl, I grew up right outside of New York City. I grew up in Connecticut, and my father used to have my sister and I earn our allowance every week, explaining how the markets work to him.
Oh my God.
I mean, literally, I remember being 5 and 6 and having to learn about interest rates and all these kinds of things. And if we didn't get the questions right, we didn't get our dollar, which was my allowance, $1 every week. And I would have to go back and learn. And, he was sort of this beautiful Renaissance man. He worked in advertising in New York City. And so even though I grew up with this, when I went to college, I loved to study, and I was always interested in the spiritual and money, and God and money, and they weren't separate to me. So,
yes.
And
I read a book once called The Soul of Money. Are you familiar with it?
Lynch, absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
So it had such an impact on me as well.
Yeah, it was like, that changed everything. Oh. My whole mindset changed after reading that, for sure.
Right. And such the bringing together of worlds.
Yeah.
Well, after I graduated from college and I had studied sort of distribution, like political science and anthropology, which is really the distribution of resources and power. Right. I sort of, was very intense saying to God and the universe, saying, put me where I can serve, where can I serve the most? And I became a stockbroker at Merrill Lynch, like within 2 months.
Wow.
Right. And I thought to myself, boy, that's quite amazing. And it was a really dysfunctional environment, or very different than something we'd experienced today, where they were closing the office. You had huge goals of money that you had to bring in, and you were cold calling and just, meeting potential clients on the phone that way, asking them how much money they had. And if you didn't bring in, I think you had to bring in $10 million in 2 years. And this was 30 years ago. People were getting fired every Friday.
I know the drill. I worked for Edward Jones, and yeah, I remember the first few months, there was like 30 of us who signed on. And by the end of 30 days, there was like 5 of us left.
Right. It was a totally different time. Yeah. No, I think my adrenal glands were in such overdrive, and I was shocked. I think I was like one of 20 people of 120, they were. Yeah. And I thought, wow, really, is this really what I'm doing? But when I sat with my first client, I saw how much intense emotion there was around money, right. Angst and shame and this and defensiveness. And I thought, wow, if I actually could really empower people so that they could see how the markets and money is here to help them, is here to assist us in our lives, this might be a wonderful path. So I did fall in love with it. I fell in love with the autonomy, the people, building your business however you wanted to. And that was 1992. And then in 2008, it sort of changed because I really saw the crisis coming. It was actually 2007 I saw the crisis coming. Yeah. And then my whole worldview changed, because even though I got very lucky, I saw that coming. And I was going away for 3 weeks. I was sort of doing master's degrees and doing a certificate of mediation with the UN. I had, this was sort of the stuff I would do. I sold everybody out who could be in cash. And then I went to the Middle East and the market went straight up for 21 days.
What did you go to the Middle East for?
I was doing a certificate in mediation.
Okay.
And I think I had an opportunity to go to an Israeli-Palestinian peace conference in Jordan.
Interesting.
And it was I've even forgotten the name of the university in California that was sponsoring it. And then I did an extra trip out there. And this was sort of more at a more innocent time. I think I learned so much more about the systems and sort of all the illusions we've been living with. And really maybe even it started with that trip for me to some degree. But yeah, so when I got home, the markets ripped open. And at that point, I didn't really feel better because a lot of people were saying to me, oh gosh, you're feeling so negative, you're worried about nothing. But the way that they collapsed was so different. Right. And I started to realize, I'm missing something. There's something in my worldview that I'm missing. And it took me about 9 months to discover what that was. And I really discovered that we actually do not have money today. And that the way what we use as money comes into existence is really the problem. And it's holding our consciousness, it's holding our spiritual consciousness back, but also it's birthing the new consciousness. So where the spiritual
tell me when spirituality came into the picture. Because we talked about money and we talked about your career, but we didn't really talk about how spirituality came into the picture.
I don't remember when it did, it was so part of the life. I mean, I think I remember when I was a 5-year-old, my parents would have these they had lots of fun friends and they would have parties and I would remember the neighbors or the friends coming over and having them look so radiant and happy and feeling, just the deep sadness or whatever was present. And I would be so confused by the conflict. And I remember I would ask my father, I'm so confused. And then I would just hear that they really, that they couldn't come in touch with how loved they were. And how loved we are and how much we're meant to really be living our full potential. Right. And so that shaped my life as a little kid, always where I was just always running around thinking and really looking for the pathway of the expressive sort of adventure of life. And still ending up banging my head against the wall a lot.
Yes, I think it's doing that to a lot of us lately, especially.
Yes, and even though I had some profound spiritual experiences around this book too, and it was also sort of in my early 20s, when I was
share some of them.
Well, I think after I made it through that program, I really was upset that this is sort of where I had landed in life. And I thought, gosh, I didn't come here to make numbers go bigger on paper. This seems like really strange. And I did have a profound experience where I was sort of shown that later in life, we'd be in a very different position. These books, I was sort of shown very nondescript books that, and in that experience, I remembered instantly sort of this time ahead. But at the same point in time, I remembered nothing when I woke up later, other than I was rejuvenated. And, even though that would have been 1994. Still, I would say still I had lots of doubt over the course. And even at this very profound time that we're at, this significant crossroads. But it does help a lot because I do believe we are at a very, very special and as long as we just keep that energy a little bit higher, beautiful, beautiful time.
And so what do you believe is to come?
Well, I think that I wouldn't doubt that every civilization has been sort of at this crossroads.
Right.
It's so interesting because we actually do not have money today. We only have debt. And this, a lot of times when I say this to people, people think, oh, that I'm paraphrasing or I'm making some kind of an analogy, but I'm being quite literal. We only are using mortgage debt.
When you say we, are you referring to the economy in general? Are you referring to us individuals? Are you referring to the country, the United States? Are you referring to the global situation?
I would say first and foremost individuals. So everyone, when we look at our bank accounts and we see the numbers in the bank account, we think it's money, but it's not. It's actually someone's typically mortgage debt. And this still counts. This is still true for states and corporations. The federal government, maybe not as much. It still is a debt they create. But I think that, sort of when we land on the earth, when we look around and we see the people around us and the sun and the moon, and we see money, we just sort of assume, okay, it exists, it's here. All right, now I'm going to kind of learn how I get some and what I do with it. But this is the illusion. The money itself doesn't exist out there. So it has in the past, but so it's the form of money that we're using that's actually creating this very indoctrinating, heavy illusion of scarcity that we're living in, that's controlling our lives. Right. And so we have this unconscious relationship with money, which is completely understandable, but we're standing at a precipice to start to have a wonderful, intimate, kindergarten, important understanding of money that's so simple, but so profound that every generation before us has prayed that we would get. Plus, we're intersecting with technology that no other civilization, thousands of years, just tens of years, no one before us has had. So we have the opportunity, we have a unique opportunity to liberate humanity. And I think many peoples before have tried, but we're the first civilization at this next crossroad within 1 to 2 years that can actually break through and create a whole new world with sustainability through this
with the right leaders in charge.
Yeah. No, actually, and this is sort of the fun thing, because, I love this because this is so symbolic. We look sort of at the heartbreak from the right and the left and the up and the down and this and that. Again, it's sort of symbolic. We have the power outside of ourselves. And so there's no political solution to this. It's just a symptom. There's no real economic solution to this. So even we could criticize, Jay Powell, Ben Bernanke, you name it, Janet Yellen, but really, again, they're a symptom. And then even as social issues have become much more prevalent, it's a symptom. And I love to use this analogy, which I think I don't know where I first heard it. Maybe it was Michael Beckwith or someone who was talking about it. Right. And he gave this beautiful analogy about or the parable about the old man and the traveler, where the old man was under the lamppost late at night looking for his keys. And the traveler comes by and feels bad for him and stops to help him. And soon, it's cold and the hours pass. And the traveler says, "Are you sure you lost your keys here?" And the old man gruffly looks up and says, "What? No, I lost him 2 blocks down to the east." Right. And the traveler is like, holy moly.
Yeah, it's a Sufi parable.
Oh, that's right. That's right. And I always knew it was important, but I never really got it.
Yeah.
And then when I started understanding the money system, oh boy, because this is where we are.
And then it's like, why are you looking over here then? Well, that's where the light is.
That's where the light is, right? And it makes us feel better. So here we are as a civilization, as a country, as a world, as a family even, and we're looking to political solutions, economic solutions, social solutions, and people are arguing and becoming more divided. And we're arguing this because this is our identity. This is what makes us feel better. But the problem truly is waiting 2 blocks down to the east. And we have to look in the dark And because the problem is monetary. The money, the dollar itself is designed incorrectly. And every time a civilization has thrived, they've designed it correctly. So it's waiting so sweetly, so patiently for us to just say, gosh, maybe I'll entertain that I might be a little right. Maybe I'm getting something wrong. Let me go and look at something else. And maybe everybody is on this circle, doing the very best that they can, but maybe we're all being used by a system. Even the people that might be keeping that system in place are being used by the system.
Because money ultimately represents value, and it's the energy of value, right? So when it's the energy of value, then there's the value of the connection between the value of money and you, the value of money and your community, your city, your country, global. And so when you go deeper into that analogy, you ultimately have to recognize that you're valuing yourself or you're devaluing yourself, right?
That's right. This is
affecting everything.
Affecting everything. One of the main points in the End of Scarcity is that money and wealth are totally separate. And this is not to mean that money isn't valuable, because it's just a tool, it's just a technology, and it's actually here at our service. But right. Wealth is so part of our being. We're born wealthy, each and every one of us. Every time a baby is born, that community is more wealthy because there's a unique expression of the divine coming through. Right. And so this, I think, is the linchpin, that when it hits like a gong and the bell resonates inside of us, that wealth is in me. It's part of who I am. Nobody can actually do anything to take it away from me. Then now life begins to reorder. And as it reorders again, sort of in the consciousness, it must reorder in the physical.
Absolutely.
But so we're living in the indoctrinated illusion of scarcity, which says money is a thing out here. Money is a thing that's scarce to have value. Now, this is total nonsense. It's a complete perversion of the truth. And you have to get it in order to express your wealth. That is such a contortion. It's actually a true perversion of who we are, of what the divine spirit is, the abundant spirit pumping through us.
Right.
Yeah, this is
it's a huge subconscious reality that we're living, right? Like, I mean, when I was younger, I always used to fight with everyone around me that, God's a sustainer. I don't need to worry about this. Just, I'm going to do whatever I want to do and he'll sustain. That's his job. Why am I worrying about this? That's what this book says. Like, either we believe in this book or we don't believe in this book,
I love it.
And so, and but the point is, though, is it enough for each individual to change their consciousness, for the outside to change?
It's a lot. It's quite more powerful than it seems, because we are connected by the unified unseen field, even though that field speaks before us when we meet each other, right? And the most powerful energy is the most coherent energy. So the energy sort of that's most relaxed in its knowing, and the most coherent energy shapes and influences all the rest. So even when we're sitting in our homes, feeling if we're being quote unquote not productive, but we're resonating with the truth, we are absolutely conditioning the field. Right. And it takes a very small percentage of us. I don't know what the percentage is. I bet some other people really do,
right.
And maybe that's changing, but who cares?
I agree. It's only a small percentage who's got to make the shift, and it'll be out there for everyone.
And it really is just like hitting the bell. Someone else now hits the bell, that we hit the bell. Yeah. And then the bell also gets the momentum itself. Yeah. So as we really shift and say, wow, the money power is in us. So there's no one actually who can stop that. And really, I think it's worth sort of fleshing that out, because it's still, the money systems also have to change. Right. do, and they will, and they're getting ready to change anyway, but we have tremendous influence. And and it's nothing is ever permanent. So even if they changed one way, they can change another way. But the whole idea of wealth inside of us, it starts first to me with the power of imagination.
Right.
And, you think of how we daydream of the things that we think of. Then when we think of the things we love and how lost and inspired we are. And whether it's the beauty we're seeing around us, the miracle of the symphony of life, the overall fractals and the wisdom of nature. And so really this imagination and passion, you can't turn it off. You probably can't even turn it off through the death process.
Right.
And so this is absolutely the abundance that is life, that is us. And so this imagination that ignites the passion, that ignites the creations and expressions that we share with one another. This is the core of abundance. This is the core of wealth. And then it also comes to the other things that we create that maybe feel somewhat mundane, but are still pretty wonderful. Indoor plumbing is still pretty wonderful. Any of these kinds of things. And so all of the beautiful, life-giving imagination and passion, everything we create as a society, the abundance of the earth itself is wealth. And we're steeped in it wherever we are. Just sometimes we're not tuned into it.
Right. So let me ask you this. Was there a point in your life when you came to this realization, and when you did come to this realization, that you switched some things in your, I don't know, in your activity, in your language, in your thinking, that actually created change that you witnessed, that you can actually speak of?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I can experience it from 5 minutes or 1 minute to the next.
Yeah.
I would say sort of, before 2020, it was readily accessible all the time. I was sort of one of these high energetic, often in awe, totally curious.
Always in synchronicity.
Really, and even the frustrations and even the great pain of life, I really took it on and looked into the experiences and found the wonder in them. So, I used to joke that when I think I was 7, the Weeble Wobbles were really popular, that Weeble Wobble treehouse. There were these little egg characters, and the commercial.
Oh yeah. Okay. I remember now.
They weeble wobble, but they don't fall down. And I used to try for probably hours to make them fall down. I was easily entertained always. And I thought, wow, that had a really big impression on creating this sort of, ooh, let's go down this bunny trail and down this bunny trail. 2020 definitely still was, I think for everyone, a big changing moment. And I had a patch, which probably I had a patch also when I started to come to really understand the intimacy of this, the profound wisdom that's in this book that I think was really given to me. Even though I did 7 solid years of research, traveling around the world, knocking on doors, reading books, going to conferences, the wisdom also really came rolling in. And I was often flat on my back, just amazed at what I was being shown. But, when I saw that when I really saw profoundly 2009, probably, that we were using mortgage debt as money, and that we had only been doing so maybe for 30 years. And that this meant there was absolutely no possibility of the American dream. It was the forever ephemeral carrot. It was the destruction of housing, the destruction of college educations, because they were being used to create debt. So a house could no longer really be affordable. A college education could no longer be affordable. And that we had to find very destructive, very assaultative ways to indebt people, because without creating debt, there was no money. Because as soon as the debt is repaid, that money is extinguished. And so we are wholly dependent on borrowers running on the hamster wheel to borrow as much and repay and quickly borrow again, just to use money with one another, because it's like a yo-yo. It comes out as a debt. It has an expiry date. It has to be repaid. It's recalled and the money is gone. And when I came face to
reflection of the fact that we devalue ourselves, because if the consciousness of money right now is debt, then don't we consider ourselves very little in that analogy then?
It really is a ramification of not being willing to take the responsibility that is required for the next stage. And so, even how the phrases go, if you're not interested in politics, politics is interested in you. If you're not interested in money, money is interested in you. The money knowledge has been written out of the textbooks. What's in this book, The End of Scarcity, is the basic knowledge we should have gotten in the first grade. And, 50, 70 years ago, it was absolutely taught in the schools that, our great grandparents of the 1870s and whatnot, they were talking about this at street corners. They knew. Harvard economists today, I would argue, do not know what's in this book. And it is as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. So it's a little bit of both. The information has drifted away. I really was able to put it together. And then I couldn't believe it. But also that's a ramification of looking for someone else or asking someone else to do what is our responsibility, but then also not having the path been made clear, not illuminated, because it's been hiding in the dark, waiting for us to say what's wrong. And because money, just as you're pointing to, represents our value, we really can never give it to someone else.
Yeah, I agree, because I remember when I worked for Edward Jones, people would ask me, well, do you recommend this, or do you recommend that, or do you recommend this? And the thing I felt at a personal level, first of all, look, if we don't pay attention, and there's the word pay and attention together, look, even language, right? If we don't pay attention to our own account, then your financial advisor, or whatever you want to call them, I believe at the time we weren't allowed to be called financial advisors, we were consultants, but whatever you want to call them, they have clients. They don't just have you, they have, let's say 500 people in their portfolio. They can't give 100% attention to your portfolio because they have 500 others to give attention to. But if you just pay attention to your portfolio, if you just learn a little bit about what your money's at and where it's at, and communicate and just put some energy into it, and it's exactly that, responsibility and care. You have to care about what you have.
Well, and you have to care about what you give,
and what you give, and what you share, and what you love,
and how you spend, because you're giving your energy when you buy something. Now, there's some things we don't have a choice, whether it's our utility bills or these kinds of things. So it seems, even though we always do really have a choice, and we are inordinately powerful, and the more that we tune into this, we become collectively more powerful. But it's I remember sometimes, even I think I had an experience in India where I was sort of questioning where some money was going that I was giving or friends were giving. And people would say to me, what do you care? Do you question when you go into a store? And I said, yes, it is your life force. Every time you make a decision to pay someone or buy something, you're actually magnifying the resonance that's in it. So even, if I were to look at this book, when someone buys it, they're actually magnifying also the energy and the whole truth. And so this purity goes down to what we put in our bodies, to You know, I had an Indian teacher who once said they didn't want us to really just go out and give money to many of the people that were begging on the street. And I thought, wow, gosh. And they would say, you receive the karma from where you give the money. And, you know, you think about that, we want our prices lower, we want our stocks higher. In essence, we really are the same as Monsanto and Walmart in the sense of saying, gosh, are we destroying the earth? Are we destroying the soil? So we're all the fractal as part of the whole. And when we start taking the whole idea back to say, my goodness, wait a minute, wealth is actually an unending resource in me because my imagination and my passion went to even serve. And even if I don't know it's really to serve someone else, we're lit up when we see what we do for one another, when we have that connection. And that sort of makes maybe like a Tesla moment that there's unlimited energy. And then we even have a glimpse of the intimacy of knowing who we are, because of course we don't exist separately. We really only exist in relationship. And so I think in those moments, you know, where I was sort of always reinforced by my parents to be productive one way or the other, that I was sort of able to get out of any type of melancholiness quickly, because I was always quickly going back into service one way or the other.
You spoke about decisions and decisions in transactions. Let's call them transactions, because when you purchase something, you're making a transaction, of course, or you're selling something, you're making a transaction, you're giving something, taking something. So in these transactions or decisions we make for our transactions, what would you recommend an individual to do before they make that decision then?
Yeah, I mean, I do really believe in slowing down, taking a breath, and really feeling into the whole. You know, however people are wired, I might be wired more for feeling. And you know, I think when it really is a solid yes, even though some of it can be unconscious, but when it's really a resonant yes, probably the body is moving before the mind anyway. You know, it's in the flow. I do think as local as people can be, there is really grace in our local markets. At least be feeding your local market on some level with one area of your life. Probably food is the best area to, if everybody did one thing in the next couple weeks or in a month, to really truly go out and find out where their local farmer is and begin to buy a few things and replace stores that are moving food from big distances. And then I think even building a little bit more of that network. So the primary functions of everyone's lives that are coming locally, and then other things could then come more regionally and globally and all the rest of it. But this is sort of the feeding of self, the feeding of home, the feeding of family, which strengthens the global network, is strengthening the local network. And it also it just whispers more to it echoes the idea that wealth is within us, and we see how rich the things are around us, and as we continue to feed each other that way, it makes it easier.
Wouldn't it be cool if there was like a global guiding system that actually encouraged us to do these kind of things? Like maybe, you know, corporations can't sell food, for example. Food has to be purchased or grown in a community. Like, wouldn't that be cool?
Totally. I really think, I mean, I think an incredible new framework, you know, if we were in hierarchical pyramidal structures, which still provided some value, you know, they provided relative stability in our lives, some sense of predictability. They're not all bad. I think I often look at it sort of like the little egg and the chick, that the egg kept the stability, the protection, all the food that the little baby chick needed, but now it starts to grow. And now that food has toxins mixed into it. The chick is having this really existential moment of pecking down what kept it safe. And so as we now sort of see some of these implosions in our institutions, in our identity, and in these structures, we're rebuilding, I think, interlinking circles. And, it just sort of, I would see maybe like a flower of life can become a representative of what's happening, where our circles, whether they're virtual communities, real communities, all of them are beginning to interlink. And corporations will actually become very transparent in this next paradigm that we're beginning. The shifting of the consciousness, of course, is first, and it's accelerated as we begin to shift the design of the money. The design of the money is going to shift the consciousness, and it's going to very quickly accelerate a beautiful new world.
And what do you see? What do you foresee for our near future then? Do you when you say end of scarcity, do you mean that literally, or do you mean that mentally?
I mean that I do mean it literally. I do. And what's interesting is, of course, we may experience a little bit more scarcity before we quite get to this. I do believe we're in the birth canal. I believe we've sort of already been dropped in the chute. And, I've sort of never had more, in intense moments of fear, maybe in the past 3 years, than I can remember ever in life. And that it's sort of existential fear, or waking up at 3 a.m. and just saying, I have no idea why my body is shaking, but it is. And either now I'm just going to wait until it's over. But we are collectively in this birth canal. And so it is possible that our resources become more scarce in the short run. It doesn't mean that they actually are scarce. Maybe they're being made scarce. And this whole host of things. It's right. Very,
because it's obviously like we still have land, we still have vegetation, we still have seeds. It's not going anywhere. So what is this scarcity that everyone is implying, right?
Yeah. I think it's the battle from the old world, throwing the kitchen sink in to hang on, saying, listen, we're used to this hierarchical structure, and holy moly, if you get rid of us, and this is not even like the bad guys versus the good guys, because this is just a mere portion of ourselves.
Because the bad guys, there are no bad guys, because they're all us. Like we're all us.
That's right. It's some version, it's some, and you even think of what we were unable to process. Somebody, who was resonating at a lower moment, they were forced to process it. They were forced to experience it. And because we are all a collective one. And, we could say, oh, the Federal Reserve does this or this or that. Well, the banking industry is stuck in this system. I think they would, most people that work in the banking industry are beautiful, wonderful people just doing their jobs. And I'm not even so sure that is there full recognition sort of that there's enslavement, there's complete enslavement of the planet and of the people who, quote unquote, are pulling the strings of enslavement, because they're also stuck in the system when you create money as debt. And you exacerbate, you wreck investment because it comes to exploitative speculation. You move capital away from productive people, and you come to war over and over, because humans and corporations and everyone cannot run fast enough to create enough debt and repay it in order to.
Interesting how you separate humans and corporations too.
Yeah.
Right? Because like it's a different energy. It's like corporations are entities. They're non-existent, really. There's individuals who run them that are the actual energy, right?
A corporation is sort of like a program, and then we sort of run that program, and it keeps that culture in place until that program no longer can run. And so our corporations are all ripe for reorganization. Everything is. It really is an existential moment, because we're losing most of our stories, if not all of our stories. And with that comes our identity. So of course we're having these moments of, wait a minute, maybe I want to go back to 2019. But, I often say the little chick in the egg has no idea of the world that's waiting for it. And even sometimes when I'm shaking inside the breaking down egg, I remember, wait a second, the chicken could not even imagine this world that's waiting for it. Much like as the caterpillar is melting away in the soup and the chrysalis, it could not even imagine becoming the butterfly. So we are getting ready to redesign these money systems. And I do think it's a confluence of two worlds. I think the old world has a much less beautiful vision of quote unquote stability or the Great Reset, redesigning our systems, which would be definitely along the lines of a surveillance token, limiting, money going completely digital. Not that it isn't digital now, because it really is, but in the sense that there would be a central power that would be able to turn the money off or turn the money on. And but you cannot keep a planet of 7, 8, 9 billion people entrained. You cannot keep the wealth of this incredible force of life contained in a surveillance net. The perception may be that, but
well,
it's
not organic anymore then, right? It's not organic anymore. It's not free flowing, and life should be free flowing, right? And like, what power actually feels that they have the right to I don't know, affect the free flow?
I really look at it as being the unfueled survivor. So that whole survivor feeling in humanity. Now, when the survivor's fueled, we're taking care of our bodies, we're eating well, we're feeling good. But when the survivor energy is unfueled, we're feeling completely as though we're not going to live. And, that bombs are coming. And so it's that energy that's so starved that creates the idea of, oh, brilliant idea. Let's create a surveillance token that limits people. So in a way we can have compassion, because it's almost like a little child that needs to be held. And, we have to make sure we're fueled as we do, but it just really needs to be observed. And
isn't it true that even the creation of this surveillance token is us controlling ourselves?
Right. It is, saying it's not safe out there. It's not safe. What does happen when the body begins to disintegrate? Right. It's a very normal, it's actually maybe a much fuller view of the reality, because sort of when we're getting things done, we're not thinking that at some point we're going to die, or at some point this is going to end. It's really not a conscious part of moment to moment. But
when people talk about the reset, they right away go to this idea of control. But then, so what's the worst control that could ever be over you?
I think the whole idea of just really being disconnected from the ever stream of divinity that's pumping through us,
which we could never be, because
I
never be disconnected from that, though, right?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
And that's why I think even if this really claustrophobic sort of lower version comes, again, you're almost creating like a neutron, like a explosion of atoms, because the divine is reorganizing, and the power that gets birthed out of this would be exponential. And I think instead this is, again, just sort of the squeeze, right? I was going to write a book called Don't Avoid the Squeeze, or the power of the squeeze, or something like that. And, and in this life, we're always sort of trying to run away from the squeeze, me included, and then when we're fueled, we're like, wait a minute, this has made me who I am. And so what will happen as we begin to see, okay, so let's say that, a central bank digital currency turns out to be this type of surveillance token. Well, it's coming on the blockchain. And so a lot of people have been afraid of the blockchain, but like any other technology, can be used for something that's
good or bad.
Right. Yeah. And so in every poison, I really should look up the phrase. I have it in the book, but it's that the cure is in the poison, or every poison brings its own medicine. And so with the internet and with the blockchain, we are standing at the precipice where every civilization, every generation, back and back and back, is sitting on the edge of their chairs, knowing that we have the opportunity to rebirth these systems. And so I believe that producers, whether it be farmers, builders, wellness providers, education institutions, they're going to start issuing the money. And today, right now, we as borrowers, so if farmers were to borrow debt, that issues the money. If Monsanto were to go to get debt, that becomes the money. So in essence, we are self-issuing our credit by promising, by signing on the promissory note to the bank that we will, and then they create it. They create it as double book entry, but it absolutely does not exist before. We're not even using fractional reserve lending. That really doesn't count anymore. And the banks just simply create a minus 100,000 plus 100,000. So it's like a quarter with the heads and tails, but it looks like money as the head. And then we pay people and they think they're getting money, but they're really getting our promissory note to repay the bank. And it's anonymous. So instead, the way the money is supposed to be created is that it comes as a promise to deliver goods and services. And every Renaissance period, this is how the money was created. The founding fathers did it quite correctly until it was the reason the Revolutionary War came. Right. And then sadly in 1812 in the United States, we went back on the restrictive British banking gold system.
Right.
Yeah.
And see, the thing is, in order for us to evolve as a universe or as a globe, these changes have to come. There's no avoiding it, right? It's to move forward, we're going to have to do this. If we don't get to free money, if we don't get to free energy, I mean, imagine if we have just free money and free energy, just imagine how much more we could evolve as a collective then.
Money will take its rightful position then, where it will be in the back seat, right? It'll be the servant to wealth. And that's why we as a culture, we as a civilization, we designed money, we created it, and we created it as something to help us do.
I think it's a lack of our trust in each other that created money.
Well, when money was first created, it was created properly. And it's sort of this beautiful goddess wanting to be liberated because money came here to say, how do you want to serve? How can I serve you to serve others? That's really the whole spirit around money. Money's merely a technology, and it never wanted to be in charge. And so when we design it in this way that it really is representing our credit, our promise to create something or help someone with something, it's designed correctly. And it doesn't distort or pervert society. When it's created as a debt, especially as a mortgage debt, it may not circulate where the people are working. A thriving business still could go bankrupt because they have to settle that debt in those scarce Federal Reserve notes, whether they're Canadian dollars. I mean, it doesn't matter. Most of the world is under the Federal Reserve systems. There are 57 Federal Reserve systems that are under the control of the Bank of International Settlements in Switzerland, all under the same type of system. And it's just a technology that's ready to be replaced and to come back. So without this squeeze, I don't think we would be ready. And when 2020 came, I cried for a while. I said, oh, I'm too late. I've been working on this since 2007. How could I be too late? And, I thought that people would want to look at this anyway, finding out that this is why there was this pernicious sense of scarcity and unfulfillment because the money was designed incorrectly. But it really is taking all of this for people to actually, enough people to take a look at these ideas and say, whoa, we can easily change it. And this is actually our work to do.
Do you have the book in front of you?
I don't have a book in front of me, but I know
I was going to get you to read me your favorite paragraph.
Oh yeah, it's probably somewhere in chapter 15, it's even though I always encourage people to read consecutively because it undoes the programming. It's amazing. There's a program that got written into the book somehow where people really get liberated from the fear and shame and not knowing enough about money and also feeling like they're not good enough. And even people who have a lot of money, the guilt around that, the book just somehow liberates people. So now they feel very much at peace, empowered. But what I love is when we get to the later parts of the book where we really see that this is actually part of our birthing process to the next consciousness is changing the money. Because also it's understanding that this wealth and this value is us, is inseparable from us. So like the king who has amnesia sitting on the top of a box where all the fortunes lie, begging. We have this inordinate wealth in us, just waiting for us to wake up to it.
Wow, what a beautiful point to end on.
Yes, it is really exciting. We just need to keep fueling each other on. And then what's, I think, very helpful in the book is the prototype is in there for communities to begin, so that the experience of creating the new exchange systems continues to fortify everyone. So yeah, the future really is ours, but and it's okay to have moments of being sad or scared in between.
Everyone go get your book, and we'll have the link in the video, and we'll have, do you have a website?
I do. It actually is called the End of Scarcity.com, or it's also my name, Kristen Ragusin, which is KRISTEN RAGUSIN. And, when people come there, they can actually join a community. I'm just having people come together so that we can start talking about help and support in creating these new systems of exchange. I hope to also have a children's cartoon version out,
cool.
And little videos. And eventually, when I get a little bit more time, I'll probably do a 4 or 6 module course if people want to go more in depth.
You can do an AI course nowadays. You could just get the AI to make the course for you.
Actually, that's probably, I know I've been playing.
Give yourself some time.
That's a great idea. I didn't even think of that. I just really want the whole thing to be a resource so that we can bring this as our reality more quickly, so we have a more graceful passageway.
Yeah, it's really interesting because you have people that are against the reset and against AI, but then there's so many cool things that's coming out of, all these things, right? Let's find the positive in it and let's move forward with the positive, right?
We really have to bless it all, because we are the fractal of everything, right? And even though at moments it absolutely feels like, things are against us, and every other moment can be different. But again, as we return home and we continue to bless this mystery of life, it unfolds and flows faster for everyone. Everyone needs to be forgiven. It's not that we shouldn't acknowledge what's happening, but we need to come home to that sense of innocence and just know that we're in this extraordinary play together.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you for this opportunity. We hope to have you back and maybe deepen us a little bit more into your course that you intend to bring out. And is there anything you want to share with the audience, of maybe something I wouldn't have asked you, or a message you want to end with?
Oh gosh, that you are so important, that you are so important. And this is, I think we all need to hear it over and over again, but each and every person, especially coming to this, you are so important, so part of the inseparable fabric of life, and so powerful. And that without you, none of this is possible. So, and may this message come home over and over, that nothing can be underestimated or understated about each life. Your life, every breath, every moment is sacred, and so beautifully cherished. Yeah.
Thank you, Kirsten. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This was so wonderful.
It was. I had fun.
Yeah, same.